What's that?
No idea. Looks interesting, though.
You sure it's okay? It kind of looks like something for, older people.
Come on, Tracy, we're 12. Practically grown-ups.
Grown-ups? Says the boy who still hides when his mom shouts his name.
Hey, I don't hide. I strategize. Now, are we watching this or not?
Fine, but just one video. And if we get caught, this was your idea?
Deal. What could go wrong?
Daniel sat cross-legged on the living room floor, the glow of his new smartphone lighting up his face. Beside him, Tracy leaned in, her wide eyes glued to the screen. Wow, this thing has so many videos, she whispered, barely able to contain her excitement. Daniel grinned, proud of his shiny new device. My uncle brought it from America. He said I could use it, but only for schoolwork, he said, emphasizing the last word as if it were a joke. Tracy rolled her eyes. Schoolwork? This is much better. Look at all these games. They had been best friends for as long as they could remember, their houses separated only by a narrow footpath. Every afternoon after school, Tracy would come over, and they'd spend hours together playing, talking, or reading under the mango tree in Daniel's backyard. But today was different. Today, Daniel's smartphone was their newfound treasure. As they scrolled through endless videos, Daniel paused on one with a strange thumbnail. It wasn't like the funny cartoons or music videos they were used to. This one had a blurry image of people moving in ways they didn't understand. What's that?
No idea. Looks interesting, though.
You sure it's okay? It kind of looks like something for, older people.
Come on, Tracy, we're 12. Practically grown-ups.
Grown-ups? Says the boy who still hides when his mom shouts his name.
Hey, I don't hide. I strategize. Now, are we watching this or not?
Fine, but just one video. And if we get caught, this was your idea?
Deal. What could go wrong?
With that, he tapped the screen, and the video began to play. The audio was low, but the images were enough to make them both sit up straighter. It was strange, confusing, and oddly captivating. Neither of them understood everything they were seeing, but they couldn't look away. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Daniel, where's my phone charger? His mother called out. Panic shot through both children like lightning. Daniel fumbled to close the video while Tracy darted a glance at the doorway. It's here, Mama. Daniel stammered, quickly tossing a pillow over the phone. His mother entered, hands on her hips. You better not be wasting time on that phone. I've told you to focus on your studies. No, Mama, he replied, his voice steady, but his heart pounding. We're just reading something for school. His mother gave him a skeptical look, but eventually walked away, muttering something about how children these days were glued to screens. As soon as she was out of earshot, Daniel and Tracy burst into nervous giggles. That was close. Tracy whispered, clutching her chest dramatically. Daniel grinned, pulling the phone back out. We have to be more careful. Let's keep this just between us. Okay? Tracy nodded. Promise. From that day on, the smartphone became their little secret. Every afternoon, after finishing their homework, or at least pretending to, they'd gather in Daniel's room, exploring videos they weren't supposed to watch. They didn't fully understand the content, but their curiosity was insatiable. Soon, the videos became a routine. Tracy began sneaking into Daniel's house earlier than usual, and Daniel would lock his door to ensure no interruptions. They even developed a system. One would keep watch while the other controlled the phone. But as the days turned into weeks, things began to change. Daniel's once cheerful demeanor grew quieter, and Tracy, who was known for her endless chatter, became unusually reserved. They avoided their parents more and spent less time playing outside. Their families noticed but didn't think much of it. One evening, as they sat cross-legged on the floor, Tracy's brows furrowed. Daniel, she began hesitantly, don't you think some of these videos are weird? Daniel shrugged, not looking up from the screen. Maybe. But they're also fun to watch. But why don't they show these things on TV? Tracy pressed. Daniel finally looked at her, his expression uncertain. I don't know. Maybe they're not for everyone to see. But it's not like we're doing anything wrong. We're just watching. Tracy didn't respond. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing some invisible line, but the pull of curiosity was stronger than her doubts. "Let's watch one more," Daniel said, already scrolling for the next video. Tracy nodded, though her heart felt heavier than usual. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the video playing. Neither of them noticed the creak of the floorboards outside the door. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel and Tracy's little secret became an unbreakable ritual. Every day after school, they would rush through their homework and gather in Daniel's room, the smartphone carefully hidden under a pile of books. The videos they watched stirred a mix of emotions: curiosity, confusion, and an undeniable thrill that kept pulling them back. One afternoon, as the golden rays of the setting sun poured through the window, Tracy leaned against the bed, her arms crossed. "Daniel," she said, her voice low, "have you noticed something strange?" "What?" he replied, not looking up from the phone as he scrolled through another endless playlist of videos. Tracy hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I feel like, I don't know, we're acting different. My mom keeps asking why I'm so quiet these days." Daniel shrugged, brushing off her concern. "It's nothing. Parents always think something's wrong. You're probably overthinking it." But Tracy wasn't convinced. She had noticed how Daniel no longer played soccer with the other boys in the neighborhood or joined her under the mango tree for their usual chats. Even at school, they had both become more withdrawn, avoiding friends and teachers alike. "Maybe we should stop watching these videos," Tracy suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel froze, his finger hovering over the screen. "Stop?
Why?
We're not doing anything bad. It's just videos." "I don't know," Tracy admitted, staring at the floor. "It just feels weird." Daniel sighed, turning to her with a small smirk. "You're scared, aren't you?" Tracy glared at him. "No, I'm not scared. I just think." Before she could finish, the door creaked open slightly, and both children jumped. Daniel quickly shoved the phone under a pillow as his mother's voice echoed from the hallway. "Daniel, have you finished your homework?" "Yes, Mama," he called back, his voice shaky. "Then come and wash the plates before it gets dark," she replied. "Okay, Mama." The sound of her footsteps faded, and both children let out a breath of relief. "That was close," Tracy muttered. Daniel chuckled nervously, pulling the phone back out.
See?
"Nothing happened. We just have to be careful." But Tracy wasn't smiling. Her unease grew with each passing day, especially when Daniel began spending more time on his phone, even when she wasn't around. A week later, as they sat on the floor in Daniel's room, Tracy suddenly blurted out, "Daniel, what if we tried doing something from the videos?" He looked at her, wide-eyed. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, leaning closer, "what if we tried imitating one of the things we've seen? Just to see if it's real, or if it's just acting?" Daniel frowned, the idea making him uneasy. "I don't know, Tracy. What if we get caught? Or what if it's dangerous?" "It won't be dangerous," Tracy insisted, her voice full of confidence. "We'll just pick something simple. Something easy." Daniel hesitated. He trusted Tracy, but the thought of actually copying something from the videos felt like crossing a line. "Come on, Daniel," she urged. "Aren't you curious? Don't you want to know if it's all fake?" He looked at her, then at the phone in his hand. Curiosity tugged at him, stronger than his fear. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, but just once. And it has to be something safe." Tracy's face lit up with excitement. "Deal." They spent the next few minutes scrolling through videos, searching for something they could try. Most of the content felt too risky, too strange, or too confusing to replicate. Then, Tracy pointed to a clip where someone jumped from a low height onto a mattress. "This one," she said, her eyes gleaming. "It looks easy." Daniel studied the video, his stomach churning. "Are you sure? What if we get hurt?" "We won't," Tracy said confidently. "We'll use your mattress to make it safe." Reluctantly, Daniel agreed. They dragged his mattress onto the floor, arranging it beneath the window. Tracy climbed onto the windowsill first, testing the height. "It's not even that high," she said, looking down at Daniel.
See?
"Nothing to be scared of." Daniel nodded, though his heart was pounding. The next day, Tracy decided it was Daniel's turn to try. Just like in the video, she said, standing beside the mattress to guide him. Daniel climbed onto the windowsill, his legs trembling. "I don't think this is a good idea," he muttered. "Don't be such a baby," Tracy teased. "Just jump. I'm right here." Daniel took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and jumped. The air seemed to freeze as Daniel launched himself from the windowsill. For a brief moment, it felt like he was flying, weightless and free. But the feeling vanished as his body slammed against the edge of the mattress, his left leg twisting awkwardly beneath him. A sharp, piercing scream erupted from Daniel's lips. Tracy stood frozen, her face pale as she watched him writhe in pain. "Daniel," she cried, rushing to his side. "I can't move my leg," he gasped, clutching at his knee. His face was twisted in agony, and tears streamed down his cheeks. Tracy panicked, looking around the room as if the walls might offer a solution. She grabbed his arm, trying to help him sit up, but he winced and pushed her away. "Don't touch it," he yelled, his voice trembling. The commotion drew the attention of their neighbors. Soon, hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway, and Mrs. Ade, a kind woman who lived next door, burst into the room. "What happened here?" she demanded, her eyes darting between the children and the mattress on the floor. Tracy stammered, struggling to find the words. He jumped and Mrs. Ade didn't wait for an explanation. She bent down, examining Daniel's leg with practiced care. "This looks bad," she muttered. "We need to get him to a hospital." Before Tracy could protest, Mrs. Ade called out to another neighbor, who quickly arrived to help carry Daniel. As they carefully lifted him, his cries of pain echoed through the house, sending shivers down Tracy's spine. By the time they arrived at the hospital, Daniel's mother had been informed and was waiting in a state of panic. She rushed to her son, her hands trembling as she touched his face. "Daniel, what happened?" she asked, her voice breaking. He hesitated, glancing at Tracy, who stood a few feet away, her eyes glued to the floor. I slipped and fell," Daniel lied, his voice barely audible. His mother didn't look convinced, but before she could press further, a doctor approached. "We'll need to take him for an X-ray," the doctor said, gesturing to a nurse. As Daniel was wheeled away, his mother turned to Tracy, her expression stern. "What were you two doing?" Tracy opened her mouth to speak, but couldn't form the words. Her throat felt dry, and her heart pounded in her chest. We were just playing," she finally managed, her voice shaky. Mrs. Ade, who had accompanied them, placed a comforting hand on Tracy's shoulder. "It was an accident," she said gently. "Let's focus on getting Daniel better first." The next few hours were a blur. The X-ray revealed that Daniel had fractured his leg, and he would need a cast for several weeks. His mother stayed by his side, her worry etched into every line of her face. Meanwhile, Tracy sat in the waiting room, guilt gnawing at her like a relentless drumbeat. She replayed the events in her mind, wishing she could go back and stop herself from suggesting the jump. When Daniel's father arrived, his booming voice filled the hospital corridor. "What's going on here? How did this happen?" Daniel's mother explained the situation as best as she could, but his father wasn't satisfied. He turned to Tracy, his eyes narrowing. "You were with him. What really happened?" Tracy's lips quivered, and tears welled up in her eyes. "It was my fault," she whispered. "I told him to jump. I thought it would be fun. I didn't mean for him to get hurt." Her confession hung in the air like a dark cloud. Daniel's father shook his head, his expression a mix of anger and disappointment. "You kids don't know the meaning of consequences," he muttered. Back at home, the incident became the talk of the neighborhood. Parents whispered warnings to their children about the dangers of curiosity, while Tracy's mother gave her a long, tearful lecture about responsibility. But the worst part was the silence between Tracy and Daniel. The bond they had once shared felt fragile, like a thread stretched to its breaking point. "I'm sorry," Tracy said one day as she visited him at home, his leg propped up on pillows. Daniel didn't meet her gaze. "It's not your fault," he muttered, though his tone was distant. Tracy wanted to believe him, but the guilt refused to let go. The days that followed Daniel's return home were heavy with unspoken tension. His leg, now encased in a thick white cast, served as a constant reminder of the incident. Tracy visited every day, but their conversations were strained and short. Daniel's mother often hovered nearby, her eyes watchful and her lips tight. Tracy couldn't tell if it was worry or blame that lingered in her gaze. The silence between her and Daniel felt like a wall she couldn't climb. One afternoon, Tracy mustered the courage to speak. She sat on the edge of Daniel's bed, fidgeting with her fingers. "Daniel, do you think we'll be okay?" He looked at her for a long moment before sighing. "I don't know, Tracy," he said quietly. "I just feel different." "Different how?" she asked, her voice trembling. Like we shouldn't have done what we did. And now, everything feels messed up." He shifted uncomfortably, wincing as the movement sent a jolt of pain through his leg. Tracy's heart sank. She had hoped for reassurance, but instead, she felt the weight of their mistake pressing down on her even harder. At school, the story of Daniel's injury spread like wildfire. Whispers followed Tracy wherever she went, and her classmates eyed her with a mix of curiosity and judgment. They were playing a dangerous game, someone muttered in the hallway. "I heard they were trying to fly like in those crazy videos," another added. Tracy kept her head down, feeling the sting of their words. The secret they had guarded so closely was unraveling, and with it came a wave of shame. One evening, Daniel's father called Tracy and her parents over for a serious conversation. They sat in the living room, the atmosphere tense. "We need to address what happened," Daniel's father began, his voice steady but firm. "These children have been exposed to things they should never have seen. And now, we're seeing the consequences." Tracy's mother nodded, her face pale. "We've spoken to Tracy about this, and she knows how wrong it was. But how did it even start?" Daniel's mother interjected, her voice rising. "How did they find those videos in the first place?" Daniel, who was seated on the couch with his leg elevated, hesitated before speaking. "It was my phone," he admitted. I didn't know what it was at first. But then we got curious." Tracy looked at her hands, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "This isn't just about curiosity," Daniel's father said, his tone sharp. "It's about responsibility. You're both old enough to know better." The words stung, but Tracy knew they were true. The parents decided to implement stricter rules regarding phone usage. Daniel's phone was confiscated, and Tracy's parents promised to monitor her activities more closely. As they walked home that night, Tracy's mother placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Tracy," she said softly, "I know you didn't mean for any of this to happen. But this is why we always tell you to be careful about what you watch and do. Some things aren't meant for children." Tracy nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I understand, Mama. I'm sorry." Her mother hugged her tightly. "It's a hard lesson, my dear. But sometimes, the hardest lessons are the ones we remember the most." Over the next few weeks, life slowly began to return to normal. Daniel's cast became a source of curiosity among their classmates, and the whispers eventually died down. One afternoon, as Tracy visited Daniel, she noticed a faint smile on his face. "What's so funny?" she asked, sitting beside him. "I was just thinking," he said, his voice light for the first time in weeks. "If we'd listened to those warnings in the videos, maybe I wouldn't be stuck with this thing." He gestured to his cast with a chuckle. Tracy laughed, though it was tinged with guilt.
"Yeah.
Maybe next time, we'll just stick to playing board games." "Next time?" Daniel raised an eyebrow, pretending to be horrified. "There's not going to be a next time for anything dangerous." Their laughter filled the room, breaking the tension that had lingered for so long. The experience left a lasting impact on both children. They learned the hard way that curiosity, while natural, could lead to consequences far beyond their understanding. And while their friendship bore the scars of that day, it also grew stronger, built on the foundation of a hard-earned lesson. Some lines aren't meant to be crossed, no matter how tempting they may seem. Thank you, besties, for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story, and if you did, you're going to enjoy this one too. It is about a woman who uses human teeth to cook for people. Please tell us where you are watching from in the comment section. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you, besties. See you in my next story.